Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to talk about piston rings. These things, as well as the engines in the modern cars we drive, are marvels of engineering. And I'm going to explain to you how important these are. They've gone through massive changes and improvements over the last 100 years. I do want to give credit to the majority of the information in this video to a YouTube channel called New Mind. They made a video that I'm going to link in the description about all the information in much more detail than I'm going to give you in this video. So please like, subscribe, and follow me on this journey about piston rings. So piston rings have changed a lot since their inception. They used to be made out of a cast iron and now are made out of mainly steel. We'll go over that in a little bit. The purpose of the piston ring is to seal the cylinder from the combustion chamber and prevent it from escaping into the crankcase. Also to prevent the oil in the crankcase from leaking into the combustion chamber. The rings do this by what's called tangential force, which is basically how the rings expand to seal against the cylinder walls. This force of the piston rings causes a drag with the piston going up and down inside the cylinder. In order to meet the ever-increasing standards of fuel economy, manufacturers, and I don't mean to call any of them individually out because they're pretty much all having to do this now, have reduced the thickness and the tension of the rings in order to make it easier for that piston to move up and down inside the cylinder. They've also reduced the weight of the piston itself and the length of the skirts. This reduces the mass that has to be reciprocated up and down inside the cylinder, which also increases fuel economy. Alongside these changes, they also use much thinner oil than they used to. This thinner oil is much easier to pump throughout the system and also reduces drag on the internal components inside of the engine. There is much more complication to what I'm trying to explain than just these few things. Again, in the video down below, they go into a lot more detail, but again, we're going to try and keep this as simple as possible. As with anything, if you're going to take from something, a give has to happen from somewhere else. We're going to go over that specifically here in a little bit. On a piston, there are 3 sets of rings, generally speaking. You're going to have 2 compression rings and 1 oil control ring, which is actually made up of 3 individual pieces. The oil control ring has 2 scrapers as well as an expander. This keeps the 2 rings separate and allows for a volume of oil to be housed in between the 2 scraper rings. Over the years, like I explained before, everything has gotten smaller and everything has gotten thinner, and these oil control rings are no different. They're much smaller and much more fragile than they have ever been before. The job of these oil control rings is just what it sounds like, is to control the amount of oil that is consumed inside the engine. As the piston moves down in the cylinder, the oil control ring scrapes the oil off of the cylinder and allows it to drain back inside of the crankcase, either through drain holes inside the piston or through the drain holes that are on the outside of the piston. What can happen with lack of oil maintenance is that this expander inside the oil control ring will become clogged with carbon. That reduces the amount of oil that can be held inside that expander and also limits the amount of oil that can be drained into those drain holes or even plug the drain holes themselves, which then forces the oil to go past the oil control ring and to get burned inside of the cylinder. The carbon that you'll see inside of these rings is actually caused by the engine oil breaking down. Oil is a rather simple carbon chain compound that we modify by introducing additives into the oil to perform a myriad of functions, from antioxidation, viscosity stabilization, anti-foaming, among many other things. These additives break down from use, heat cycling, and age. The carbon that this oil turns back into is actually very abrasive, and it can cause the piston rings to be lodged inside of the grooves that they're housed in, which can lower compression as well as increase oil consumption. The main factor for the prevention of this problem is proper oil system maintenance. Again, the video in the description has a lot of information about this. One very important thing about newer designed engines is that the oil control ring actually is designed to meter a certain amount of leakage back into the cylinder. They allow about a 1 to 3 micron film of oil to remain in the cylinder in order to lubricate the piston rings. Older piston rings were made out of a cast iron that was impregnated with graphite. The graphite would allow for a certain amount of emergency lubrication, a dry lubrication. The problem with iron rings, however, is that they're much softer and they don't give you the type of longevity that we require out of our newer engines. More modern piston rings are made out of steel that is coated with chromium or nitrided, which is a process in which nitrogen is actually impregnated into the metal with heat in order to increase the hardness of the outside coating. This hardness allows for extremely longer engine life and wear protection, but does not provide the lubrication protection that graphite impregnated iron does in emergency situations. These rings actually require that film of oil to help them seal as well as to prevent wear. Because of the metered leak from the oil control rings, there's actually a specified amount of oil consumption that is allowed by pretty much all manufacturers. Most will say that 1 quart in 1,000 miles is not out of specification. If you end up going 5,000 miles and you're burning a quart for every 1,000 miles, you're going to burn 5 quarts in an oil change. Most modern engines don't hold more than 5 quarts. I know you'll read either in your owner's manual or hear from manufacturers that 10,000 mile oil change intervals are not uncommon. I, as well as pretty much any other technician you ever talk to, is not going to recommend that you do that. Not because we want to sell you oil changes by any means, but because we don't want to sell you an engine. So all of these things are not even to mention what the oil has to do in the system, from variable valve timing to cylinder deactivation to just general lubrication and cooling of all the other internal engine components. So the engine oil in your vehicle is under more stress than it's ever been in the past and cannot be neglected without consequence. So let's go over a couple of things in some videos that I show a lot of my customers. So this video explains motor oil inside of engines and what happens when it breaks down and the types of sludge that it can produce. So right here we see engine oil that is good, clean, and over time the oil additives break down, more of the oil gets converted back into carbon and gets turned into sludge. The sludge does not lubricate, will build up inside of passageways and block oil from getting to very important components inside of the engine. So if you don't know the last time your oil was changed, give us a call. We're more than happy to help build you a personalized maintenance plan for your car to keep you on the road with confidence. So thanks for your time and attention. Thank you for watching this video, and come on by to experience the 6-star difference. That's going to be a problem, isn't it?